5 o'clock. All right. We're going to start by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're going to have an open forum, so if anybody would like to publicly comment on any of the agenda items, we have an open forum right now where you can comment on governance issues over which the City of Nacogdoches has domain in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Members of the Commission shall not discuss, deliberate, or make any decisions on topics not posted as an agenda item, and speakers have 3 minutes to do so. Would anybody like to come up?
And just to clarify, each item on the agenda will have a separate designated public comment portion. So this is for items that aren't on the agenda, just general planning items across the city.
Thank you. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on then to the consent agenda. We're going to approve the minutes from the December 12th meeting for planning and zoning. All right, whenever anybody's ready, we can make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as printed.
I second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, city minutes are passed. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to agenda item 5B. All right, this is to consider a request of approval of a zone change from PD plan development to R1 single family for approximately 61.4 acres of land, being all of a 64.1 acre tract conveyed by HGT Group LP to JBSC Development LLC as described in warranty deed dated March 22nd of 2022 and recorded in clerk's document number 2022-3135 of the real property records of Nacogdoches County, Texas, save and accept 2.7 acres that lies outside of the city limits of Nacogdoches, generally located at the eastern terminus of Park Street. This request has been submitted by JBSC Development LLC, case file ZON 2022-09.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Elena Helton, City Planner. Again, this is 61 acres of undeveloped property located at the end of Park Street. The request, again, is from a planned development district to the R1 single-family district. The R1 single-family district is intended for low-density residential development, and these lots must meet a minimum lot size of 8,250 square feet. Just to give the Commission a little background on this planned development, this planned development was initially established in 2000, and it included more than just the property. It actually included 217 acres. That was annexed in 2000 and then subsequently zoned PD plan development with a concept plan and master plan. At that same time, the Village Gate preliminary plan was approved. That's the subdivision located just east of the development. And then in 2001, PD development plan for Village Gate was approved along with the first phase of Park Street. And that Village Gate subdivision included 38 single-family lots. Since then, there hasn't been any development activity in the PD. So PDs are unique because they expire if they aren't actually developed. And so this PD has essentially expired. The applicant is proposing to rezone it to single-family for a future residential subdivision. This is also part of the economic development agreement that was approved in 2022 with City Council, and the preliminary lot layout included 143 lots. We did include a copy of that development agreement at your place, and we'll look at the layout in just a minute, but just wanted to give you some background information, and then we'll go over the original concept plan and kind of guide you through the history of the development. So again, first established in 2000, Village Gate in the first phase of Park Street was built in 2001, but we really haven't seen any activity on the property since then. This is the original concept plan and Park Village Master Plan that was approved as part of the PD. It includes a mix of uses with commercial along Stallings Drive, along with several single-family subdivisions and a proposed future school site, along with the Park Street extension. And again, this was approved in 2000. The PD development plan for Village Gate, which included 38 single-family lots, was approved in 2001, and this essentially is the same lot size and lot average as your R1 zoning district. So the zoning request to R1 is consistent with the density and dimensions of the subdivision next door. The 380 agreement that was approved last year by City Council includes 143 single-family lots with an average lot size of 8,250 square feet, so again, consistent with that R1 single-family zoning district. It also includes the extension of Park Street and public utilities. And 380 agreements are unique, and actually, Lily was kind enough to print out copies of the local government code. So Title 12, Planning and Development, and Chapter 380 outlines the provisions for which cities can engage in economic development agreements. So I'm going to pass this out to you guys.
There's 380 and 381 in there.
So this is just for reference. Essentially, it outlines the guidelines that cities must comply with whenever engaging in an economic development agreement. Typically, these are for a public good or public improvement, and so to offset the cost for future development that supports public initiatives for local development, housing, cities may engage in an economic development agreement to offset those costs. So that's just for reference. The future land use designation of the property is single family, which is consistent with the general area as well as the subdivision next door. So the request is compliant with the comprehensive plan, future land use plan. These are just some site photos of the entrance into the subdivision. So off of Stallings, you see the big sign, that's the Park Village, that's the overall development sign. And as you go into the street, it actually dead ends and you see some barriers. And then to the right, we'll get there in just a minute. These are photos of the property. You can see it's very heavily wooded, undeveloped, raw land. This is the Village Gate subdivision that's located at the end of Park Street. You can see the entrance, and again, it's a single-family character neighborhood. What public comment? So as part of the process, just like any other zone change, we do send written notices to all the property owners within 200 feet. We also send courtesy postcards to all property owners within 500 feet. So as part of this process, we sent 13 letters, letters to 13 individual property owners, and then postcards to 40 individual property owners. We haven't received any written response, but we did receive a couple of phone calls from the residents in the neighborhood. Some of them just were confused about the nature of the request and wanted to make sure it was single family and that it wasn't going to be any sort of tax credit housing. And then we heard from one of the HOA reps with concerns about the future maintenance of the extension of Park Street. As of today, it's my understanding that there's actually a maintenance agreement between the HOA and the city to maintain irrigation and some landscaping in that large landscape island in the middle of Park Street. And so today we're talking about land use, but in the future, if this property is approved for R1, there will still be a preliminary plan that's to come forward to Planning and Zoning Commission for approval along with a final plat. And those will include provisions for improvements for public infrastructure, and any additional improvements that are above and beyond the city standard in the roadway will be the responsibility of the owner. It's common for subdivisions to want to have landscaping standards kind of above and beyond what the city provides for their entrances. And so it's common to engage in an agreement for additional landscaping or a higher standard of landscaping for the entrance into the subdivisions. So we haven't received a copy of that agreement yet. We're still looking, and there's a couple of residents here. They'll probably speak to that, but just wanted to let the commission know that was a question, and we are trying to figure that out. And we'll try to have an answer before council, but we don't have an answer for you today. These are the conditions for approval for zone change. They include things like compatibility with adjacent land uses, providing for orderly growth and development of adjacent property, making sure there's adequate facilities, and that the request doesn't impose any nuisances or create any quality of life standards for adjacent property. And so with that, staff finds that the request does meet all of the criteria, and the applicant, Jake Crawford, is here to answer any questions of the commission. And so with that, we'll conclude staff's presentation and open it up for questions of the commission before we open for public comment. So,
Does anybody have any questions for Elena?
I have a question. Can you go back to the original concept plan that was, because I hadn't seen that.
It took us a while to find. It's kind of a Crayola drawing.
I know if you had it, you would have given it.
Yes. So on this plan, you'll actually see the Village Gate layout in the lower left-hand corner. And then there was some commercial proposed along Northwest Stallings. You see the Park Street extension, and then the lighter pinks and oranges, those are future residential subdivisions. And then there's 26 acres shown for a proposed school site. Again, this was 20 years ago. The owner of the remainder of the PD, George Middlebrooks Sr., does not have any intentions on pursuing future development of the property. So it's our expectation that as this property develops, that'll be a catalyst for additional development, and we'll receive additional requests for zone changes. And so the intent of the original plan no longer is applicable based on previous property owners. So staff finds that the R1 single-family zoning district makes sense. It's consistent with adjacent subdivisions, and it's actually in line with the original intent of the concept plan, which was for future low-density single-family subdivisions. R1 is our lowest density single-family subdivision, and this was also a goal of City Council to try to incentivize additional single-family construction inside the city limits. I know it's kind of difficult to read because, again, it's a crayon drawing.
So does the applicant own the parcel that's the subject parcel?
Yes.
With those boundaries? And other people own the adjacent?
The applicant owns the 61 acres, and then the remainder of the PD that's located east, that's still owned by the original property owner. So the applicant purchased this property in March of 2022, which is around the same time that the development agreement was approved by City Council.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the city limits, the boundary there? Because is that an in-holding or an exclusion area there that's south of the newer subdivision? It's kind of confusing.
It is confusing, and it's this weird donut-shaped property. So whenever the city annexes property, we have to provide a development agreement or non-development agreement that essentially provides some extensions to not be in the city limits. So previously, we would have involuntary annexations, which means we would have city-initiated annexations kind of against the property owner's will, but part of that process is we have to offer an agreement to let them remain outside of the city limits. So that's what happened here. So you have this strange little donut, but that more than likely will be annexed sometime into the future with the state legislation essentially removing our ability to annex property involuntarily. I'm not sure when that will happen. When that property starts to redevelop, they'll probably want to extend city water or city sewer, and at that time, we'll have the opportunity to negotiate an annexation. But this was a piece that was excluded because the property owners at the time didn't want to be annexed. It is strange. It's not common to see this type of configuration.
So I think you're talking about the rectangle, and I'm talking about the trapezoid.
Yes, over here.
With the one that's already developed.
Yes, that's the one that I'm talking about.
Okay, so they didn't want to, so it wasn't, the city didn't push it, they just said, okay, you're outside.
Yes, ma'am.
And then this part, the rectangular part, that will become part of the city?
Yes, the applicant has already requested annexation for that piece, and that's actually, we're taking that to City Council tomorrow evening to initiate those proceedings, and so that'll be incorporated into the overall development.
Is that the 2.7?
Yes, sir.
That's not, okay.
So you guys will be seeing a zone change request for that piece if this piece is approved.
So how does this I mean, I don't know that it's really our job to worry about this agreement, but just out of curiosity, how does this impact the 143 homes that were part of the agreement? Is that, or the approximately 143, is that the builder's intention to use this lot to put that many homes? I know they would all fit on there.
Yes, so if you look at the yellow outline, it essentially matches the outline shown for the preliminary layout. So the zone change boundaries are the proposed subdivision boundaries. And again, if the zone change is approved, they still have to go through the preliminary plan and final plat process, which has to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission to make sure that it meets all of our regulations on street construction standards, lot size, so on and so forth. So you guys will have another look at it before the property is developed.
Okay. Any other questions for Elena? Okay. Thank you, Elena.
Thank
Would-
you.
Would the applicant like to come up and speak? Mr. Crawford, please, how are you?
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you. Good
Thank
evening.
you. Please
My
state
name's
your.
Jacob
yes,
Crawford.
perfect.
I represent JBSC Development and Crawford Construction. I'm just here to answer any questions that you or the community may have.
Can you tell me what size homes you're talking about 143 houses. What size homes are you talking about building approximately?
It's in engineering right now, and so our hope was 143. We are gonna have more than that. The average lot size as of right now is gonna be around 10,800 square feet, which is a lot more than 8,200 square feet. Everything changes, so we're trying to shift it, but our intent is to have a minimum square footage of 1,650 square feet to 2,300 square foot houses there. And so our lot size, our lots being that large, we're gonna have room for that, but we've got some grading issues that we're working through with 215 Engineering right now to determine that.
And will these, are you going to build, you're talking about speculatively building these homes, or will you sell lots to people to build custom homes?
As of right now, we're gonna build spec houses. So there'll be, the normal Crawford construction spec homes, which are very custom.
Okay.
They're not track homes, so you're not gonna drive through there and see one house as you go through. It will be very diverse. It will mimic, Village Gate subdivision in many ways. However, it'll be a little more updated, more current.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Elena mentioned an HOA. Is that, how did you make the decision to have an HOA, or is that
We
required?
will have to have an HOA, and we have not determined all those factors yet, but we will have to have an HOA to take care of everything. It's similar to Village Gate subdivision as they have.
And the HOA has landscaping requirements? Because if I
Yes.
remember, I think you had told me previously that R1 doesn't really have any landscaping requirements.
No, but the Village Gate subdivision, as part of their PD, had some landscape kind of open reserve lots along North Stallings, because they wanted to build in some like buffers against North Stallings. So that was part of the original developer's design plan, because they didn't want single family right up against the highway. You know, they wanted some buffering. But other than that, straight R1 zoning doesn't require any additional open space or landscaping or anything like that.
If I may, we will have HOA, and it will be restricted, and we will have landscaping requirements, probably more restrictive than Village Gate. Could you go back to the exhibit, the subdivision plat, the preliminary? Thank you. I'd like to point out something there on the left of that exhibit. You'll see that green space. I believe that's a 50-foot green space. So that's voluntary. We're gonna separate, because we know that our neighbors in Village Gate would not want a house in their backyard, nor our lots to have a house in their backyard. So we've got it's somewhere between 20 and 50 foot of green space that we're not gonna touch. So,
Are any of these lots gonna be set aside for a little neighborhood park, or is there any trails or or is this
There-
totally gonna be built out?
so there is another plat, it's preliminary, and I can't really say that it's gonna be exactly that, but we are looking at having a park. A 3-acre park, right, matter of fact, right in the middle, and a walking trail all the way around this, but I can't say that will happen for sure until the engineers say yay.
Are there any streams on this property?
There are not, no ma'am,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Mr. Crawford, when you had submitted all of this to request for the 380 to city council, you had a certain number in mind on the sales price of a home. I'm just curious, because of everything that's been inflated, home prices going up, what your average home price is gonna be for your homes?
We're thinking an average around 350,000
350 to,
to 550,
okay. Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
Anybody else have questions?
I don't, but thank you.
All right, Mr. Crawford, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Would anybody else like to come speak?
This is y'all's opportunity to.
Good evening. If you can state your name and your address, appreciate it.
I'm Gary Newman. I live at 925 Village Gate Circle in Nacogdoches, here in the Village Gate subdivision. One of the questions I had was, is Park Street going to be a one-way in, one-way out?
I'm sorry, the meeting's being recorded, so if you don't speak into the microphone, they can't hear you at home, if you don't mind. You repeat your question one more time?
Is Park Street going to be a one-way in, one-way out into the new subdivision?
The extension shown on the screen just shows it extending into the development and stopping there. So as development occurs in the future, you'll see Park Street extended with future development.
Okay. So my question would be to, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Ted?
Jay Crawford.
Jay. All right. So your planned HOA is going to have maintenance responsibilities for the extension of Park Street, or what?
Yes, sir.
Is there any way we can tie all this together?
I'm open to any discussions. Yes, sir.
So just to clarify, tonight we're just talking about the land use, and the zoning is R1 single family appropriate
Well.
for this property. There will be a preliminary plan that'll have those specifications and details that gets approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with a final plat with construction drawings for Park Street that show in detail what the improvements will be. At this point, until the zone change is approved, I don't believe the developer's gotten to that point.
No, I understand. But I just want to throw that out there so that it'll be in the back of his mind that it is out there.
Yes, and we did mention that to the applicant before the meeting. Hey, this came up as a comment
Yeah,
from the HOA. So,
Well, our main concern is that we maintain a nice entrance into our area and that the streets are kept clean and free of debris.
Yes, sir. I think with the home prices being that.
No, I
yeah,
understand.
see, right.
But I'm just saying during construction,
Oh, absolutely. Understood. That's a main concern for a lot of people with construction.
yeah,
yeah, and
because it ruins a lot of tires.
Yeah, and just to be clear, after Park Street is constructed, it will become a city street. So the city will take over maintenance of the street.
Oh, it's not a city street now
It is. It is a public city street.
that we're maintaining.
Well, it's my understanding that the HOA is sharing costs of some irrigation and landscaping in one of those islands.
No, we're the sole responsible party for it.
We put the sprinkler in there to the barricades. We pay for the electric, the water, the lawn maintenance, that's all, we're paying that $200 a month, or $200 a year.
I'm going to ask our
yes,
city
Steve-
engineer, Steve Bartlett, to come up and try to address.
Do you have anything else
Those
to ask
questions.
right now before we get him up
No.
there? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna bring Steve Bartlett up, our city engineer, and he's gonna address all these concerns.
Hi, Steve Bartlett. So I think the question is the street versus the improvements in the median and green space areas. So, correct. And I was the original engineer on Park Street and original engineer on Village Gate, so I was kind of there when they worked all this out. So they the HOA wanted to put in improvements, just like you see, and they were good. And there was an agreement that we're, of course, trying to find right now in records, but an agreement that they could do that if they maintain electrical for lighting, if they maintain water for irrigation, and basic landscape maintenance, because in the city version of that, we would just mow a median. And so in order to keep it more beautiful, that's what I think everybody's talking about. They absolutely pay to do those items. The street proper, the curbs, the pavement, the right-of-way, and all the utilities there are all city-owned and city-maintained. So that's, if you can understand, we're kind of overlaid on each other, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
When the streets continued into this new subdivision, will the same arrangement hold? Will it maintain the same landscaping and look and everything, and if so?
So it's premature, Ms. Forbes, to know that, because we don't know what their plan is. So they could come in with a 2-lane version of a street and ask for approval. They could come in with a 4-lane version and a median. At this point, they're not presenting design to you, they're presenting just the plat. So the answer is it's possible. Right now, you don't have a plan in front of you to know exactly how that unfolds. We have standards for streets of various sizes, and so they'll have to meet those standards for width and lane width and curbs and medians if they do it. But there's options there that they could certainly approach us with from the engineering side of the coin that would still be acceptable.
Thank you. And this is, once again, to remind everybody, we are voting on zone change, and while we have questions about design, it's really too early to tell. The city engineer just said that, and then also Mr. Crawford's working with 215 Consulting to come up with some type of plan, which will be presented later on, should we choose to approve this. All right, would the next person come up who would like to speak? Nobody? Would anybody else like to speak on behalf of this matter? Yes, sir, come on up.
Yes, I'm Robert Peel. I live at 721 Village Gate Circle.
Okay, Mr. Robert Peel, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
My property backs up right next to this new development area. And I was told when we purchased there that we have a 75-foot easement behind our fence. In other words, no one could build within 75 feet of our house.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering if that's still valid.
Okay.
I heard earlier 50 feet. I don't know what it is. So,
Elena, can you answer that question?
Yeah, let me pull up the plat. I'll be right there. Excuse me. Hey, excuse me. So this is a copy of the final plat for Village Gate. There's no easement shown on the property. I know that on the backside of the property, there's that reserve area, being proposed by the applicant, but I'm not familiar with, it may be like a private easement, like a private franchise utility easement or something of that sort that will include that landscape reserve area that the developer mentioned, but I can't recall at this moment. I'm sorry, I don't have that information in front of me.
That's all right. Mr. Peel, who did you hear that from?
I can't remember. It's been so long.
How many years
20
ago?
years ago.
20 years ago. When you purchased a piece of property in that subdivision, is that correct? I think that.
And then, of course, several years ago when we woke up and we heard them
Can you speak into the mic?
tearing down the trees in the back, it kind of alarmed us, you know. We didn't know how far they were going to infringe on that easement
Sure.
and build a 2-story house where they're looking down on our backyard.
Sure.
So I'm hoping the 75-foot easement is still legit, but I don't know.
Mr. Bartlett, would you like to say something on that?
Sure. So again, having worked on both as a surveyor and engineer on the project, I can tell you we never recorded that I know of a 75-foot easement there at the time. So this particular plat is throwing in a buffer zone in there that's in, I think, 25, 30 feet wide. But having, like I say, been there and constructed all this, we never crafted a easement outside your yard that I know of.
If I remember correctly, it was supposed to be a utility easement.
So there may have been a proposed utility easement back there of separate record, but it's not, there's nothing showing of record now. In other words, the surveyor now has pulled all that information. So I think what you're seeing, the proposal is on the actual plat for that. Here, switch it over there.
I don't know where you live, but there is a road right-of-way shown that looks to be roughly 75 feet on the one that's up on the screen at the bottom left-hand quadrant.
Oh,
I don't know what that
I think
is.
it's the old access easement that was abandoned.
Yes, so there was an old road easement that came in on the southeast corner, kind of a village gate, and there's a cul-de-sac and all that was abandoned, so all that was. That's one of those. And so, that was kind of thrown in, and there was and I don't know, which lot are you on?
I don't know what lot number it is, but we're right in the middle of the block.
Can you flip back to Village Gate? Okay, there's the subdivision. You know where you are in here?
Yeah, 721.
Well, I don't know by address. If you come in the entrance here, tell me,
Right over here.
on this side?
Yep,
Okay.
right in
Yeah.
there.
So you can see down in that lower right-hand corner of this exhibit, that's the old cul-de-sac. Now, do you back up? Are you down in that corner possibly?
No, I'm not in the
You're not
corner.
that far, okay.
No.
Okay, so that's the only thing I know that's kind of an oddity that would have a buffer area is that old road right-of-way that was in there, so. Let's say, as far as I know, we never dealt with any easements in there of record.
So it sounds like I've lost my 75-foot easement.
Well, I don't know where it came from. I worked with Mr. Middlebrook when we did it, and so, if there's something out, then I apologize to you, but it's nothing that I've ever seen or known of, and it hasn't shown up on the new surveys as well, as of record.
Okay.
Anything that's of record.
Thank you, sir.
So,
I would
thank you.
guess unfortunately, it's probably not in your deed, so
Yeah.
it was something he told you and he may have meant at the time for that to happen, but.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Peel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Would anybody else like to come up and speak? Okay. All right. Any other questions from our commissioners to the public or to Lena? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we change the zoning to R1
Okay.
for the 61.2 acres.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Well,
Proposed development, or whatever.
yeah, 61.4. I will second it, and this will open it up for discussion amongst us commissioners. I think, as we do need more R1 housing. It is something that the city has talked about quite frequently. The median average home price in the United States in general has risen to about $400,000 and up. And that's unfortunate because I don't know how the youth who graduate from college can actually afford any of that or single families, which we are building single family homes in this city. So the price range, of course, when I had asked Mr. Crawford about it, is not that affordable in my personal opinion, but we do need more lots to have single family homes within city structure so that we can have families living within the city. So there's my comment for it. Anybody have any questions or?
I'd also like to remind the commission that this item is scheduled for city council on January 17th. Some of these recent questions that we received from the HOA, we will get answers to those before that meeting. We just didn't have time to complete the research beforehand.
Sure.
But we will provide any additional answers on the easement that the other gentleman referenced and on the history of that maintenance of the landscaping in Park
I would
Street.
like to address everybody's concern about that, as we always do. And so please put that for sure on it so that we can circle back to it as well. But since we seconded the motion, I'm sorry, I forgot to take everybody's vote. Would all in favor?
I have a question first.
We can discuss it after we,
Okay.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
All opposed? All right, so
sorry.
Now the question can
I
come.
meant to ask Jay Crawford earlier, and this is really just for my own education. Why is it better for you to switch from PD to R1? From a builder's point of view, what is it about PD that you find to be more onerous than going with R1? mind. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
No, I wish I had the answer. I know that the R1 is for single-family residential homes. And so, I'm really just kind of going from my surveyor, doing what my surveyor is telling me to do, is to get this into R1. I don't know all the details to that portion. I'm just a house builder. I apologize. Elena could probably help me with that.
Yeah, PDs really are for unique developments that are proposing something outside the box that doesn't quite fit into our zoning ordinance. What Mr. Crawford's proposing meets all of our sub-regs, all of our zoning regs. There's no need for a PD because it would comply with all of our standards. So PDs really are for unique, kind of outside the box things that we don't normally see from day to day or wouldn't be allowed by right in the zoning ordinance. But it fits into a zoning category, so it's appropriate for a straight zone change. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
It would be like a gas station or something?
No, the request is for R1 single family, which only allows for single family. Yeah, a planned development district basically allows a developer to create their own zoning district. They can create their own standards, different land uses. It provides a lot of flexibility as far as what can be developed, and those get approved by city council just like a zone change.
Okay, so if somebody came in.
I'm sorry, could you come
you
to the
step up to the
podium
mic, sir?
and address, because we want everyone at home to be able to hear you. If you could state your name and address, please.
My name's Dennis Eby. I live at 912 Village Gate Circle. My question is, if this subdivision goes through, which I go along with it, what happens to the PD area in the back there? Can they come in and put an industry in there, or?
So the PD is essentially expired, meaning they can't do anything with the property until they update the PD or change the zoning, which would go through this same process as far as public hearings and notifications. So right now, all that orange that you see located to the east is PD. It's expired. They can't really do anything with it right now until they change the zoning. So it's not technically, it's not entitled for development.
Okay, so they could come in later on and put a manufacturing plant in there.
Well, they could come back, whoever owns that property or future owners could come back and submit a request to city council for a different land use. But that would be a very public process that would allow for public comment, just like we're doing now, and be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and city council. So there's a process. It's not just a staff administrative approval. It's something that city council would have to approve.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, ma'am? Yes. Okay. Oh, come up to the mic and speak first. Yeah. Please state your name and your address. It's okay.
Janice Newman, 925 Village Gate Circle.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm looking at the zoning, and you're saying that everything in orange is PD?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what happens right here at Village Gate where we live, that's orange, and right across the road beside us that's orange? Can they build a store, commercial, anything there, gas station?
So all of that is still zone PD. Everything on the east side of Northeast Stallings is expired, except for Village Gate, because it's been developed. So that piece that's just north, across the street, that's also an expired PD. They can't do anything with that until they go through the zone change. On the other side of North Stallings is a separate PD, and so that's a whole separate property owner with different land uses that were approved as part of that concept plan. I think there's a bank over there right now. So that's a separate property owner and a separate PD.
Okay, well, I'm talking about right there by my house.
So that's not going to change. This request is not a part of that property. So that'll stay PD.
Until we hear about it, and then we have to come back.
Yeah, so because it's owned, you guys own your individual lots, PD, just like a zone change, can only be initiated by the property owner, or city council can direct staff. So,
Who owns that piece of land? Middlebrooks?
Which one are you referring to?
Right there by my entrance. Like where it comes up here, this little piece right here. Who owns that?
So that's also owned by the HGT group, and that's part of that expired PD that I mentioned. So they can't do anything with that property until they come back and get additional approvals from city council.
Okay, but we will be notified if
Yes.
it comes back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Ms.
Thanks
Neiman.
for your interest.
All right. I think I put the cart before the horse there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I did that.
Think of my question. so.
That's quite all right. Well, we had taken a vote to carry the motion forward, so
I think we had one more question.
absolutely.
You
Please
had a-
speak into the mic, Mr. Newman.
Yes, it's Gary Newman again. You had another drawing that showed the commercial development across the road there, and it dipped into our entrance area. Could you show, no. No, it was purple.
So we
I remember that.
Oh, I saw it. It was, yeah, it was the one before that, I think, Helena. Or two back. Yeah, there you go. There's purple down there. It says B2. But that's pretty far from Village Gate.
No, it was showing where the bank was commercial development, and then it showed a little, like a half a pie into our residential area. I think back
Is that-
towards the front.
Is that the one?
That's the one.
Oh, that's the future land use plan.
You-
So
okay,
that- so that's-
so right there
that's the-
where it says commercial, that's not zone
Yeah,
commercial?
Sorry, excuse me. So the zoning map is different than the future land use map. The future land use map is part of the 2003 comprehensive plan that shows the 10 to 15-year plan for how the city should develop over time and proposes uses for different areas of the city, but it's not a zoning map. It's meant to guide Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council in making decisions about different land uses. So this is a future land use plan to demonstrate that the single-family zoning district that's requested is consistent with the future land use single-family designation on the property. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Maybe they'll put an HEB there.
No such luck.
Alrighty.
No, that's the question.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so put the cart before the horse there. Well, we made a motion. Ruth made a motion to approve it to change it from PD to R1.
R1.
I seconded.
And
We all voted
and
yes.
it was unanimous.
Unanimous. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you all.
All right, we're going to move on to Agenda 5B. Is that the one? Nope, 5C.
5C.
We're going to consider a request for approval of a site plan for a PD Plan Development District for lots 1, 1A, and 1B, City Block 64, located at 2827 Railroad Street. This request has been submitted by Warren Sparks, case file PD 2022-04. Thank you, Elena.
Elena Helton, City Planner. So this is a PD site plan. This is the last phase of our plan development process. On your screen, you'll see a guide that kind of shows you step 1, 2, 3. That first step is the concept plan that gets approved by City Council that lays out the preliminary land uses. The development plan is more detailed. It provides for preliminary locations of buildings, parking, access, and then the PD site plan is that final phase, essentially is construction level drawings that gets approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. This property was first zoned PD in 2021 because there was an existing contractor's yard located on the property, and the applicant was requesting to change the zoning to keep the contractor's yard, but then phase it out over time. And so there's also a single-family home on the property, which is the applicant's primary residence. And so, again, that was approved in 2021. Then the development plan was approved by City Council last year, and that included the addition of short-term rental cottage-style cabins, and also included a reduction in the timeline or quickening of the timeline of phasing out the contractor's yard. And so this is, again, the PD development plan. The PD site plan is very similar but provides more detail. So this provides for parking arrangements, utilities, drainage, and building separation. Staff finds that it is consistent with the development plan that was approved last year, and the applicant is in attendance. If the commission should have any questions, these are some of the plans that were included in that development plan from last year. These are some renderings of the different individual cottages that'll be used as part of that resort-style recreational development. These are the screening standards that were approved by Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council last year. The only change from the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation from City Council was that the original request included to discontinue, a proposal to discontinue the contractor's yard in 2026. City Council extended that to 2028 to just allow for more time, just in case something happened and he needed more time to move the business. But that was the only change. These are just some photos of the primary entrance and some character photos of Railroad Street. It's a very kind of rural, wooded, beautiful area. These are some images of that existing drive that's included on the property that will be primary access for the cottages. These are some images of the landscape buffer area that's included in the PD and required to be preserved by the applicant. That is located in between the cottages and Railroad Street. These are images of the private lake on the property. This will be the primary amenity for people that are visiting the property. And the applicant's proposed activities for visitors including hiking, fishing, paddle boating, and things associated with the lake. These are some images of the contractor's yard area, which includes building materials, some fleet vehicles, construction equipment, and then this is the existing office and shop that's on the property. And again, the PD outlines that this will be phased out in 2028. These are some images, or sorry, this is an image of the notice map. We notified property owners within 200 feet, as well as provided courtesy notices for property owners within 500 feet. We didn't receive any written opposition or concerns from any of the residents in the notification area. These are the conditions for approval of the PD site plan. Essentially, it's looking for compliance with the PD development plan the City Council approved. Staff finds that the proposal does meet the conditions for approval, and we recommend approval of the PD site plan. The applicant is in attendance if the commission has any questions, and with that, I'll conclude staff's presentation. This also has a public hearing comment portion, so after questions, we'll open it up for public comment from the audience.
Okay. Elena, will you go back to the first slide? Maggie, Commissioner Forbes, and Commissioner Perry, you guys weren't here when we spoke to Mr. Sparks the first time around. Welcome back, Mr. Sparks. Actually,
I was here, maybe not the first time, but maybe the second.
The most recent.
Most recent, okay. But knowing the process of which we have to do, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Oh.
Yeah, concept plan to development plan, city council to site plan. Okay, any questions for Elena?
I think you said this, but you go faster than I'm capable of processing.
I'm so sorry.
So let me just
Yes, ma'am.
ask again. What's the big difference between the Second Amendment and the Third Amendment? What's changed?
So the PD site plan is essentially just a more detailed version of the development plan. This will be used for the actual construction of the improvements. So it's very similar. Again, here's the development plan, which provides for the layout of the cottages, the U-shaped access. It shows the location of the future outdoor storage area for the contractor's yard. And then the PD site plan is the same thing, but just with additional details. So it shows the parking provided for the cottages. It provides for the building separation. It calls out the proposed utilities. It includes more detail on the building materials of the access and improvements to that to make it accessible for fire and police, and just provides much more detail, and you can actually use it to go out and construct the development. So this is what we would typically see for a building permit.
Basically slopes, grades, things like that.
Flow of drainage, things of that sort. It shows the proposed fence along Railroad Street and the width of the access.
So where it says provide drainage, that's adequate detail, or how do you get that detail?
Well, it varies from development to development. For brand new construction, typically you'll see, depending on the size of the development, you may have a detention pond shown, and it'll show the direction of the water flow into that detention pond. In this scenario, there's a private lake located on the property, and so the applicant has proposed to grade the development to where the water will flow into the lake, and it has capacity to accommodate for the additional development. And so on here, they're showing arrows indicating the flow that's designed into the private lake so it won't flow onto adjacent properties. So engineering has reviewed these plans, and they find it's efficient for the type of development that's proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks a lot. Oh.
I did want to say thank you for making sure we were caught up on the conversation.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you, Elena. Okay. Mr. Sparks, would you like to come up and make any comments? We just want to talk to you.
I'm a good listener. You know, yeah, the drainage is all just kind of all mapped out and everything is, you know, running. I appreciate you guys for working with me, you know, on this project. It's pretty rough from going from where we started to where we at now. So I certainly appreciate you guys for working with me on the project. But hopefully we got the drainage and everything is perfect the way it's lined out and where to lay out.
Okay. Any questions for him?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to renting out a cabin someday.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking forward for you guys to come over.
Mr. Sparks, how are you going to advertise your little area here?
I will probably, I know I'll probably start out with Facebook and then just, you know, push it a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
You know, later on, just kind of test the water and see how it goes.
That's good.
You know, we kind of build this project. We just kind of go as it allows me to go, and so.
All righty. How's your neighbor?
I hope he's okay.
I think he's okay. He didn't show up today, so it's
No,
great.
he didn't. I hadn't heard anything out of him, so far he's okay. But I can assure you, no, he's when everything hits the fan, he'll be here.
Yes.
You'll hear from him.
This looks like a good plan proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.
This will be fun.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on it?
We do have to open the public comment
For
portion.
public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody, would anybody like to make a public comment? Mr. Bartlett, the only one in the audience?
I don't talk in public.
All right, we're closing that. All right, council. Any comments or questions?
I'm still going to fight for my vicinity map because I did see that the ordinance requires that a vicinity map be on this site plan, and I'm fine with this site plan the way it is, but going forward, it would be nice to have.
Yes, ma'am.
this. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for pointing that out. That's something that we did miss, but we will ensure that future PD site plans have the vicinity map. Yes, ma'am.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept this site plan as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Okay. Motion carries. We will be approving the PD site plan for Mr. Sparks here. All right.
So item 6 is just discussion, possible action on future agenda items. I have received a request from Commissioner Forbes to bring forward some workshop items to talk about different types of design for single-family subdivisions, specifically that provide for preservation of waterways and natural areas, so we'll be bringing that forward soon. I did want to let you guys know that APA did finally approve our board membership application, and so they sent me some directions for how you guys can go online and create your account, so I'll be sending that out to you this week as well. And sorry for the delay, but you guys will be able to use your own email. You won't need a city email, and you'll be able to log in and access all of that, all those benefits of the site, so we're excited about that.
Bye, Mr. Sparks. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye. Can I clarify what you said about your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about cluster zoning, and it just seems like that R1 development, wouldn't it be great if there was a section where there were smaller, more affordable homes mixed in with the big fancy homes, or, you know, maybe some tasteful multifamily, something that fits in with the development that isn't something that makes, you know, it triggers NIMBYism. But you talked about cluster zoning and some other ideas that maybe come from elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that would be really exciting to hear about.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, cluster subdivision standards were one of the things that we talked about, where it doesn't change the zoning, but it allows more flexibility in lot size and lot configurations for areas that are encumbered by wetlands or creeks, and allows them to maintain the same lot yield, but maybe provide varieties in lot size. And so you may have a section that has smaller lots, a section that has bigger lots, in order to accommodate that natural area. And so that's something that we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about some other design standards that could be incorporated into future changes to our subdivision regs.
Mixed use?
Yeah, I'd like to know about mixed use. I've talked about that for a while now, and I think that as a city, we do a poor job of doing mixed use. Like, you know, we have discussed, it's a zone change to R1, and once that's up in the air, it's really hard to talk about design standards. But hopefully, with everything going on with the master plan and coming up with new standards and new zones, basically, for zone changes, that we can actually come up with something.
Those are also going to be things that we'll talk about on January 25th with a joint workshop with council and DTJ Design. They'll talk about housing, issues that we're having with that housing, but also maybe some proposals for how we can address some of those things.
And that's on the 25th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In council chambers, I believe it's at 5 or 5:30. I'll double check.
Okay.
But yes, ma'am, on the 25th.
Another thing I wanted to bring up again, Elena, is the overlay for a green belt. We had mentioned something about that, but really love to delve into that to talk about potential use of something like that. And obviously not making decisions on it, but discussions.
Okay. Greenbelt overlay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then in regards to our meetings, you know, we had left last year at the end of the year talking about one time a month meetings. Are we still on for that, or is that changed, or what's going on with how many applications are coming in? It looks like it's pretty light today.
Yeah, so the rationale for adding the additional meeting was because we were requiring those neighborhood meetings for different types of zone changes,
Right.
which was really delaying the process for
Right.
some of these developments. So in order to accommodate that, we, you know, provided some additional meetings so that way there wouldn't be any lost time.
Right.
Essentially. We haven't had a lot of those types of requests lately, but we could revisit the number of meetings and what triggers a neighborhood meeting versus what doesn't. And so we'll bring forward that discussion as well and just reevaluate it. Because since then, we haven't had as many of those. For a while there, we were having neighborhood meetings like every other week. So it's slowed down a little bit, so it's time to kind of reevaluate and see if it's needed or not.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we'll bring that forward.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Anything else?
I wanted to commend Amy on her excellent minutes.
Thank you, Amy.
They were very thorough. I appreciate that.
And the dividers in these
Yes.
notebooks.
Oh, the
Wonderful.
tabs? Yes,
Yes.
yes. I've been able to flip back and forth like never before.
Yeah, for somebody who's filling in, this is excellent.
Yeah,
Great
well,
idea.
so Amy comes to us with 10 years of experience in municipal government. She has replaced Rhonda Lewis, so she is our new permanent full-time office assistant, and her previous experience has been invaluable. And so we've really enjoyed having her, and she's been a great new addition to the team. So yes, thank you for that. We appreciate it.
We didn't forget you either, Juan.
We want to see more presentations from Juan.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Yes,
speak,
those
it's
will be
very
coming.
fast.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So we plan on bringing those forward too.
And we appreciate you too, Elena. I don't know how you're doing everything that you've got on your plate right now, seriously.
One day at a time.
Yes. All right. With that, we'll
Steve
go.
is always there with you, so he must be doing the
Steve's
same
everywhere in
and
this
more.
city. We are lucky to have all of you
I don't think I ever go to a
guys.
meeting that he isn't there.
All right, we're going to adjourn this meeting. I think it's 6 o'clock. Oh, 5:59. Hey there.
Right.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.